Okay, so now we're starting to get into some advanced concepts. These are intermediate, okay? I think that even though I say these are advanced and they might not seem immediately applicable, I think if you start working with them, you'll find that these are actually quite accessible. Okay, so movement is the sense of progression and change that happens throughout a piece. So this involves developing your musical ideas so that it contributes to the piece's forward momentum, the forward evolution. So if you were to use the verse chorus approach, that structure provides movement because the listener will know that you're starting with a verse. Oh, you're probably going into a chorus. And if you did a chorus, there may very well be a verse 2 for you to go to. If you have a verse 2, you almost certainly have a chorus again, right? It's propelling the listener forward. So that's one way of having, that's an easy way to provide movement. Some more advanced ways that you might want to think about movement is in terms of like what you're actually playing and the movement of the individual phrases. So if you have a lot of changes happening at once, we would consider this to be fast movement in your song. If there are few changes, if your chord progressions or melodies tend to last over long, over long notes, then we would call this slow movement. And so this isn't like, as you're getting to know your musical ideas, as you're getting to refine them, you can start to think about what are some ways that I can, include balance, like we were talking before, into my movement now. Like if you have a measure that has like a lot of changes, how does that feel? Do you feel like you want to keep having that, or do you want to balance that out with some slower parts, and vice versa? If it's really slow and it feels like your song isn't really going anywhere, one way to add a bit more movement would be to add more changes to try to balance out, And I feel like as I'm saying this out loud, this feels like a lot to take in. But this is why it could be really helpful to work with someone who's experienced in writing music to just talk to you about your own songs, right? And this is part of why I wanted to create this live stream and make it available, because this is the kind of thing that, like, hopefully if you get value from this, you'll be able to come back and watch it over and over again. And get more out of it. So that's my hope anyways. Okay, moving on. Some other ways that you can get some movement into your song is by trying like a call and response. So a call and response is when a musical phrase or a melody is followed by another phrase that complements it or contrasts it. So, if you have a phrase that's kind of going up, finishing and following it with something that's going down, again, providing balance and contrast. It's all interrelated, but having that call and response propels the listener forward, like they add some movement. In the past on my channel, I've talked about the idea of exploring and then returning home. So this idea of like when you are going out and exploring different things with your melody, it's really nice for your listener to be able to return back to her home base or the tonic, right? If you are unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, I will add a link to that video in the description of the replay of this so that you know what I'm talking about. But for everyone else who's familiar with that, the idea of exploring and returning home, when you're going out, you're propelling your song to have movement. When you're returning home, you're also providing movement coming back home. And it draws your listener in. And like, I don't mean that you're like hooking your listener and like they can't stop listening until you get back home. What I'm talking about is like inviting them on that journey with you, right? Like if they know that you're exploring and they can tell that you're about to return home, it's like you're not leaving them guessing. You're inviting them to join you on that return journey. And that can be really nice for a listener. if you decide to share with a listener, if you decide to share your song. But of course, your music is for you. And another thing, my last point here for movement is that if you feel that your piece is missing some movement, sometimes this can be an especial challenge with piano, which can tend to like draw out a little bit. It doesn't quite have the same rhythmic feel as a guitar. So if you're writing music for piano and you feel like you're missing some movement, consider adding a beat to the background. Like if you have, a drum track that you could play against, and see if that helps. Because I've seen it happen before where a song didn't really feel like it was going anywhere, but as soon as they added a drum section or a rhythm section, then all of a sudden it picked up. So that's neat. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that one of the things that I really like about adding movement is that the progression of the musical ideas that you include in a song can resemble the person's experience of change that they experience through that song. And so when you have these overall, movements between verse and chorus, returning to your verse, returning to your chorus, sometimes that can mimic or resemble the change that a person is going through emotionally as they are going through your song. You're taking them out on a journey with that verse, bringing them home to some core message in a chorus, heading back out on a journey for a verse, and then coming back to a chorus. So that's kind of a neat thing about writing music. I promised that I was going to talk a bit more about the concepts of verse and chorus as a way of infusing movement into a song. This is a very established structure for music that I thought could be helpful to help you if you want to use these different components to know how you can use them. I'm not pretending to be the final expert on any of these ideas. This is just what I've noticed, and this is how I use these elements myself. But I've heard other people talk about this too, so I know that I'm not alone in thinking about it this way, okay? So the basic idea is that the verse, the chorus, and the bridge serve different purposes in a song. And so this can impact what melodies and chord progressions you use for each of these components. And it can also impact like whether you use them at all or how you use them. And it also can give you guidance. Like if you have a piece of a melody or a line that you want to use and you want to develop and you're not sure how to develop it, thinking about like where in the song it might fit can help you build and can help you expand, right? Okay, so basically, I think I'll actually start with the chorus because the chorus is the most important here, okay? The chorus is the repeated part of the song, okay? If you have a song that has a verse and a chorus, chances are you're repeating the chorus more than once. The chorus tends to be the element of the song that is the most memorable, and it tends to carry a message. If you're using words, it tends to carry the message that is the actual core message of the song. In contrast, the verse kind of sets up this chorus. The verse is where we, provide a bit of backstory, or we have some examples of what we're talking about. It might be a reflection. If you have multiple verses, it might be because you have multiple examples of what you're talking about in the chorus. So when we're going back and forth between a verse and a chorus, the verse, you can think of like setting yourself up for this message that you have in the chorus, okay? The bridge, a bridge is not always included, but when it is included, a bridge is often, it's used as some kind of a contrast. And it's like, it's a contrast from the verse and the chorus. Maybe it's just like a sudden realization, or it's some emphasized statement that like tells the listener, like, I'm really serious about this. But the bridge is basically like an interjection that, helps provide more detail than the verses did and adds a little bit more understanding to the chorus. Sometimes I've seen it actually where the bridge provides a new realization that actually changes how we understand the chorus. That one can be fun, but I've never done that successfully myself, so I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know how to advise. And I just want to back up through my comments because somebody asked about the chorus. Okay, so Code Me. I don't know if Code Me is still here because this has gone to be a pretty long live stream, but the comment reads that they do a lot of music production on hip hop and rap and then write lyrics for it. And I often find the chorus to be the most difficult part of the songwriting process. So if you're still around, Code Me, I welcome you to provide a bit more detail into what you find so difficult. If I were working with you personally, probably what I would ask is like, what have you been saying in your verses? And like, are your verses setting up a story or setting up examples like of what? What is the core message that you're trying to get through in your song? Like, or, and just to finish that thought, and like, if you have, does this help you create a core message that your verses all point towards, you know? And like, or on the flip side, when you look at the stuff that you've written already, when you look at this, this structure, have you already written the verses, or do you feel like any of those pieces could actually be the chorus? Maybe you find that there's a part that you've written that tends to get repeated over and over again. That could make a really good chorus there. Maybe you've written it already. So that's where I would go with that.